shouldst, I can't even say that word, thou shouldst eat to live, not live to eat. Or, fitness is like marriage. If you cheat on it, it'll never work out. Or there's another one I love. You should keep an open mind and a closed refrigerator. Have any of you experienced had the experience of being overweight? I'm not going to look at anybody in this situation. Or maybe the prolonged feeling of exhaustion, lack of energy. Well, these two areas for me have been very discouraging, very disempowering. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey of my weight loss. Back in 2008, it's been a long time, it's been over a decade now, I was 340 pounds. Wow. I was exhausted all the time. I'm not as exhausted as I've become over 40, but it was one of those things where I was raised in a household where the environment didn't, I wasn't taught how to make healthy choices. And there's just a lot of little things that our family did that produced an obese family. The consistency that I needed wasn't there. The discipline, it was a preacher's household. My father was a preacher, and there's a lot of conferences and late night meals and just really bad habits of eating. And we were all obese. Thankfully, I was never made fun of. In school, I was a cool kid, and we were into music. My whole family was, but I was definitely never the girlfriend. I wasn't the one they flirted with. I was just the friend. And I just kind of try to be positive and say, oh, well, heat expands things, so I'm not overweight. I'm just hot. Now I can honestly say I love myself, and I know I'm hot. It's not expanded though. So recently, so basically back at that point, I had decided to get the lap-down surgery. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but basically it's where they put a band around your stomach. I'm not going to go into all of that. But I had gone from 340 down to 280 pounds within the first year. And then I stayed the same for 2 more years. And it was a little bit frustrating because I'd done that huge surgery and I thought, oh, it's a magic trick. I'm going to be skinny and I'll be happy. But I didn't realize that you actually have to change your habits and have consistency in order to produce lasting results in your health and in your body. So I had a girlfriend of mine gave me a handful of energy pills once. I'm not going to say the name of it because it's bad and I don't want you looking for it. But it basically got me to the gym, and I went for 10 days straight, and each day I was on the treadmill for over an hour, drenched in sweat, but I felt so excited because it wasn't hard. I was so huge, but yet I could do that uphill on an incline. And so what I did is I just decided I'm going to take every bit of every type of energy drink I could find to give me the fake energy. And you know, honestly, even though it's not exactly healthy, it really served me at the time. It got me into the consistency and the ritual, and I felt like there was actually hope and a way to do it. So over the next couple of years, I went down to a size 6. And for me, that was 150 pounds. And I was tiny. It was awesome, but I was also very malnourished. And at the same time, as I was working out, I was also experiencing a dependency on fake energy. And so there was a point when I was at the doctor, and she said, you can't take, these stimulants anymore. You have to be on blood pressure medicine. My blood pressure was so high, which is the reason I was feeling so weird. And so right after I got off of the stimulants and started taking this blood pressure medicine, I went up 50 pounds in 3 months, and I was terrified. I was like emotional every time I talked about it, just because I never wanted to go back to where I was, and all of a sudden I felt powerless again. But the beautiful thing is in that moment, I was actually at a place that had been long enough to where I had created a habit. That was like eating or drinking. I went 7 days a week, regardless of how I felt. I showed up and I told myself, even if I just stretched, that was the hardest thing. So I was still consistent in this area, even though I couldn't do 2 hours. I could do maybe 45 minutes. So I have basically, up until now, several years later, maintained 200 pounds. I'm still cute. I'm a lot healthier now. And I still have my ritual, and I've found ways to balance myself in order to, you know, continue my gym habits. So basically, I boiled it down to 3 categories I feel are the most important categories to focus on if you want to have lasting change in your, not just your weight and your body size, but also in how you feel. I made them 3 M's, just so you can remember. The first one is meals, which is your nutrition. The second one is your mind. And then the third is movement, which is your physical activity. The latter 2 I have mastered. I have over a decade of proven consistency in this. The first one though, meals, nutrition, is where I've fallen short. And now I just turned 42 November 3rd, and I'm exhausted. So this, I was thinking, oh, what am I gonna research and talk about with passion? But honestly, nutrition, I mean, there's so many different diet plans out there. There's so many different doctors and scientists. It's crazy. So I studied the alkaline and acid balance, the diet, where you keep your food alkaline. I mean, I had to use common sense, and to me that makes sense. So I'm sure you've heard of the protons and the neutrons, and you look at the atom and there's all these different trons. And you know, when you eat a really high alkaline, you know, high acid diet, you're gonna see a lot of protons, which is just lacking a ton of oxygen. When you have a really high diet in, that's really alkaline, which is non-acid, you have a lot of electrons. I could memorize that because I thought about electricity and energy. So they bounce off of each other, and I thought, oh, that'll give me energy. So basically, living alkaline, you guys should all have a chart to see what a neutral pH is. This is just for you to look at. And I feel like it's really important to start organizing, you know, looking at what you're eating and your lifestyle and making it realistic for you to start incorporating more live plants into your diet. But there's not, again, I think you really have to kind of test it. Put it out there, try it, see what it does. What's the result? Because we're all so different, and there's so many different diets. You have to really find something that makes sense and be consistent in it so that you can see lasting change. The other 2 areas I'm not going to have a lot of time to go over, but mine is similar to your physical nutrition. I have been into the motivational speakers, into feeding my brain, thinking about the amount of time I spend listening to positive things versus negative things. And if you can kind of relate that to the acid-alkaline balance, if you were to measure it, this is what I'm going to be doing right now. Like starting a week ago when I started thinking about this, I decided I'm going to apply that same strategy and start measuring how much time am I listening to motivational speaking or positive things, and how much time I'm spending on the news. And just like with your body, microorganisms won't thrive in a very oxygenated environment. But you know, the weeds, the negative thoughts, the bad things we go through aren't going to thrive when you're happy and positive. You can't. It's impossible. So anyway, I'm out of time. The red card has been up for quite a while. But, you know, 80% is psychology with your mind. Or when there's anything that you want, basically everything, 80% of it is psychology, 20% is mechanics. So mind is super important. And then movement, that's common sense. Just get something that you like, that distracts you, that you can do long enough to where it forms a habit. You can have consistency in it, and you'll keep doing it. If you do it something too complicated or too out of the way or difficult, you're probably not going to hold on to it long term. So anyway, I am very excited about the fact that I didn't get to all of this, and I actually filled it to 5 to 7 minutes every time. And I'm going to be doing this, and I will do another talk on this and tell you my results. I have been for a week, and I'm feeling a lot better, so that's powerful. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy. Troy, we're going to do an evaluation for you.
Oh, yeah, thanks. My mouth is hot.
40.
I need at least 5.
We'll give her
That's the perfect number, actually. And it's a perfect pH.
7.
There you go.
All right. Who wants to talk about it?
Oh, I'd love to talk about you, but we don't have that much time. You gave a wonderful speech that is pertinent to everyone. Your topic was something that everyone probably, even if they don't want to, needs to hear. How can we better ourselves? How can we be healthier? Which seems to be something that everybody's really interested in. So I loved your topic. I loved your opening. You asked us questions. You got us to relate to you by forming a common ground. You're very conversational. It's fun to listen to you because it's like talking to a friend or hearing a friend over the phone. So all of those are wonderful positives. I love the handout. I would have liked to see some references on the back so we
Yeah.
could go to them and help ourselves. Since this is a research sort of thing, the references that you used would be helpful to us as well. One other way that you could make it easier for us to follow you, although I didn't have trouble since it was everything linear, was to use the stage. When you were 340 pounds, when you told us that story,
Yeah.
you could be far on our left, and then as you moved through your physical improvement, you could move across the stage for the different stages and then come back to the center. I can't wait till you speak some too. Nice job.
Thank you. Anybody else?
What Diane said, you are very conversational and you're very comfortable up there. At least I felt you were very comfortable. Almost too comfortable. I think if you, and I don't know, I'm just guessing, but if you had notes there, so it looks like it was written out, but maybe go back and read them again and edit them a little bit and practice them a little bit more. And that will help you cut down on your filler words, because you did have quite a few filler words. I liked the story that you told. I did want to hear just a little bit more about that story, because that's a personal thing and that's something that we can connect with. I felt the notebook was a little distracting because you didn't really use it. You looked at it a couple of times, but you did not need it for sure. And I think you could have put that down and even used your hands more, used more gestures to get us more involved. But I appreciate that you're talking about something that can be difficult to talk about, but you did it very comfortably and you made us comfortable doing that. So that's a big plus. Thank you.
Sure.
Joy, awesome personal story. I love that you related all of this to your personal story. That was something that is universal for all of us, although it may have looked a little bit different overcoming our personal challenges. I love your natural humor. Those moments just really shone. I also love that when you had the three aspects of what made this successful for you, you used alliteration on the meals, the mind, and the movement, because the alliteration helps make it memorable for us. So that was a great device. The proportions were off, and that's why you went over on this, because you spent so long on the personal story. I have the advantage of having the stopwatch right here. You didn't start talking about the 3 M's until about 6 minutes.
Yeah.
And the mind until 7.5 minutes, which is when you should have been finished. Spend less time on the personal story and more time on the aspects of this that you researched and what we can take away from this. I also wrote down something about the notebook. If you did feel like you wanted to look at that notebook at some point, you could have easily put it on the, in this case, the music
My
stand.
mentor told me to get a clipboard, so I'm just
But-
following rules. No, I'm just
And that's using it. Actually, if there are important facts or statistics, it's great to have it written down so you can double check on it. So that part's good. But holding it in one arm meant
didn't,
that you
yeah.
couldn't move as freely. You could have put it down and then picked it up
Yeah.
at certain points if you wanted. But overall, I really feel inspired by this, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else?
Yes, sir.
And
Great job, I'm just gonna agree with what everybody else has already said. But you had one sentence when you were telling your personal story that really captured me, and that was, I'll be skinny and I'll be happy. And how many of us have had that thought? And I think you could take that line and run so many directions with that for some future speech. Because I think so many people could relate to, if I do X, then I'll be happy. It may not be skinny, it might be something else. But we all have those false thoughts, that that's not really what's gonna make us happy.
yeah,
But that really stuck out in my mind.
all right.
That was so fascinating. Like, I'm impressed if this is your starting point. I think you could break this up into multiple speeches. I'd love to hear the emotional journey of the rest of my family was also obese, and I made a choice for my health. What it took to start getting yourself into the, something I still can't do, getting yourself into the gym on a regular basis. How did you do that? This chart could be broken down into a whole nother presentation. And how did you choose between just doing exercise and nutrition, lap band versus gastric bypass?
That's another
A
stage.
whole other, so like, what a brilliant starting point. The sky's the limit.
Thank you.
I'd like to say, if anybody has anything else to add comments to Joy, you can see her after the meeting, but Joy, it was a wonderful speech. I enjoyed it.